Hi, welcome to the small shed. This Saturday I'm starting to put a new loft hatch in for a friend. See you in a minute. One of the Men in Sheds guys asked if I could go and have a look and give him a hand, or in fact do, an increase in the size of a loft hatch in his house. He'd got the gas board coming to fit a new boiler, and they wouldn't do it unless they've got reasonable access, and it's apparently a small hole. So I'm going over to have a look at that at the moment, just to see, have a quick look at it. It's late Edwardian, early Victorian, I would think, and that can only mean one thing, and that is really where the difficulty is with this job, and that is lath and plaster ceilings. Now, a normal cutting a roof hatch is fairly straightforward, making it larger. It's usually a matter of just sawing out the plasterboard to the size you want, and trimming the opening, put a few bits of timber in to support anything that you've cut out, and you either line it and put an architrave around it, loft hatch, or you put in one of these pre-made plastic ones. The job's done. The difficulty arises with lath and plaster ceilings, which are prone to being fragile when they're 100 and 150 years old. What tends to happen is, if you're not careful, the minute you touch them, the whole lot comes down. So we've got to be very careful with that. If that's what I'm going to find, we'll have a look and see what it looks like as a job when we get there. The other problem I'll probably have to look at is height as well. I'm used to ceilings that are 2.3 metres high. In a Victorian house it's likely to be well over 2.5, and that in itself causes issues with getting up there and working on it. So let's go and have a look anyway. Now, the access wasn't too bad, easy enough to park outside. Small flight of steps up to the front of the house, which is, steps is the last thing you really want when you've got a lot of gear to move in and out, but I suppose it could have been worse. It could have been 3 stories up instead of 2. As I feared, not only was it fairly high up, the loft hatch itself was very small, and I managed to get up a set of ladders and have a look through the hatch, and inside was just a complete maze of pipes. They'd had an extension built at the front of the house. The pipework from the waste pipes ran from the front right the way through to the back of the house, and there was almost zero fall on it, so I'd got to be fairly careful with what was done in that area. There's a 4-inch soil pipe and a couple of waste pipes from a shower and basin, and as I say, if they'd got 50 mil of fall in 4 or 5 metres, they would have been lucky. Right, so we have a lath and plaster ceiling, which I was afraid of, but you know. It was also easy to see once you were up there that all the lath and plaster was, as I'd half feared, falling apart, and was just almost just a layer of rubble and dirt in between the joists. The only saving grace is that the ceiling had been overboarded afterwards. What tends to happen, people will come along and put plasterboard on underneath the lath and plaster without stripping it out, and that effectively saves the risk of the whole ceiling dropping down. So that was worth seeing in the flesh, if you like, and knowing that I'd got no major problem from that. So here we are back, just going over to have a look to actually start doing some work. Hopefully I can do it in 2 stages. Take a couple of days of mornings to do it, I think. First one is to just go in, sheet the place up, get some access, and carefully cut out the plaster work from the ceiling. If I can cut out, there's a joist running across which will need trimming. If I can cut that out as well, so much the better. And that'll just leave me a couple of trimmers to put in and drop the hatch in, depending on what they've chosen to have. So we'll see how we get on this morning, and hopefully it all goes to plan. The actual preparation took a lot longer than the work itself, I think, for this job. I knew in advance what was going to happen, and therefore it was pretty important to make sure that the floor was completely covered. It was debatable. I nearly taped up all the openings in all the doors to seal them, but in fact in the end I bought some painter's roll of very thin polythene film which I taped up over the walls. That stopped the dust getting on and lying on the wood chip wallpaper, and effectively made an enclosure that I could work inside. The first thing then to establish was a centre line between the walls, which I did with a bit of masking tape, put a line down it. That gave me the middle of the trap and where the hole could centre. And then after a bit of poking around, I found the actual joists that existed above it and marked those on the ceiling so that I could work from one of the joists as a solid end point. And then I marked out the ceiling with a Sharpie and a square just to make sure the opening was in the right place, and attacked it with the little works cutter. It's like a small circular saw, and it proved ideal for the job. Just cut along all of the perimeter of the ceiling itself, of the extended opening, and that way it was isolated pretty much straight away from the rest of the roof, so that anything I disturbed wouldn't cause any problems further on. I had to pull all the old lining out from the other trap door, and again similar sort of thing, cut it out rather than tried to get it out in any other way, because it was far less invasive to just cut it into pieces and gently prise it away rather than getting a hammer and a crowbar to it. It was fairly easy once you cut the sides to pull it off more or less by hand, and that left me the original opening, and then I could just work from that gently to make the whole thing larger. The original plasterboard came off, and then came the dirty bit, which was getting the laths down, because once you start removing those, the actual original plaster fell off pretty much straight away, but the filth that came down with the rest of it was a completely different experience. But once that was down, that more or less left the job ready to just clean up. And at that point, having established a clean hole, I could come back on another day when I'd had a shower and finish the job off. But again, as with the preparation, the cleaning up, they were the things that took the time. Actually cutting the hole out was simple, but it's the hour or so of setting up and the hour or so of cleaning down that is where the work is. And that's why it's useful to have an old shop vac type thing, because the amount of times I filled the vacuum up and clogged all the filters, a normal domestic vacuum cleaner, if I'd used the people's whose house it was, it would probably have ruined it within a matter of half an hour. There we are, good morning's work. I think I've got done what I wanted to get done. Filthy job, I'm absolutely covered in soot and filth and muck. So I'm going to go back home for a shower now. So all that needs doing now is to trim the opening up, which I can do from a ladder, put the side bearers in and order the trap. So hopefully I'll come back in a couple of days' time, get the trap finished, and we'll be another job signed off. Now I'm going to leave that one at that point now. We've cut the hole out. Next week I'll get it all prepared, put the trimmers in, and hopefully get the loft hatch fitted as well. Look forward to seeing you then. Bye!